Hi, fourth grade. Happy Monday. I hope that you had a great weekend. I'm so happy to be with you today and to be talking about the lessons that we're going to be going over today. I have a few things in the email in regards to picking up the rest of your items from school this coming week, so make sure that you pay attention to that in the email today, as well as a Bible video for you about Daniel's life. We're going to be studying courage and looking at the story of Daniel in the Bible this week. It's a 3-page lesson, so I thought that today we could spend some time just with a fun cartoon to refresh our memories a little bit about the story of Daniel. So you can take a look at that today. The math is a review, and I have the answer sheet attached. Please feel free to email me with any questions about that. Remember looking for common denominators as you're subtracting with fractions and borrowing from the whole number. For language today, we're going to be on page 160, and we're going to be determining in exercises Think A and Think B if you have a contraction or a possessive pronoun. So we're going to be looking at the difference between it's, their, and your in terms of the way that they're spelled. Words that sound the same but are spelled differently are called homophones. And so I actually have a video for you on BrainPop that I want for you to watch in addition to this lesson for just a little bit of review. And there's also a reading activity to go with that where you read some sentences about Tim and Moby and determine whether you should use ITS, IT apostrophe S, there, or there, depending on the spelling. So you can go ahead and work through the video, the related reading, and activities Think A and B today. We see in Think A, it says, write C in the blank if the sentence is correct, and write I if it's incorrect. So if the word that they're using is being used correctly. For example, number 1, I think its wing is broken. Looking at the word its here, we're talking about it being an I for incorrect because IT apostrophe S is actually a contraction, right? So if we were to break that contraction apart, it would say, I think it is wing is broken, and that wouldn't make any sense. So the correct spelling for it's in that sentence would actually be, I think ITS, wing is broken, as in showing possession. Whose wing? The bird's wing. The bird isn't it, right? Okay, so you can go ahead and do that for Think A, and then for Think B, it says place a check by each properly spelled possessive pronoun. So just go through. That will be a little bit of spelling practice for you today as well, and you can complete that activity as well. Me thinking about whether or not there needs to be an apostrophe if with the word, or just in general if the word is spelled correctly. Okay? All right, so that's for your language today. Don't forget to do the BrainPop and the relating reading with that. And then speaking of reading, I actually have a book that I found online with a website called Epic that allows us to be able to read books together online, and I'm really excited about that. So if you click on the link that I shared with you, I was able to log in and get access for us. So you should be able to click on that link and read the book online with me. And what should pop up is the story called Mr. Popper's Penguins. Oh gosh, there. Can you see that lighting? And I'm just going to kind of try to toggle here myself, but if you notice, here, if you toggle over to the right, you'll see an arrow pops up. And the arrow then is what allows you to click on it and turn the page. So you can turn through the pages of the book. We're going to read chapter 1 together. So if you want to, you can push pause and you can pull up the link, right? And listen as I read this story with you just for chapter 1. You are then going to read chapter 2 on your own, all right? So Mr. Popper's Penguins is just a wonderful story about a husband and wife who end up getting a penguin and then another penguin and then having lots of penguins in their house and just the adventures that take place with that. They actually also made a movie about it, which I haven't watched, but it is obviously a pretty popular book if it's been made into a movie, right? And so our author is Richard and Florence Atwater, and I would imagine many of the tales from this story might come from ideas that they put together, maybe even some experiences from their own lives being together. And chapter 1 is actually called Stillwater. So again, I have chapter 1 up, all right, and I'm going to read that chapter to you. And as I read that chapter to you, as you toggle over to the right-hand side of the screen with your mouse, an arrow should pop up, and the arrow should be then what allows you to go ahead and turn your pages. So let me read chapter 1 to you, and you can read along with me once you've opened the link, and you should arrive right at chapter 1. It was an afternoon in late September in the pleasant little city of Stillwater. Mr. Popper, the house painter, was going home from work. He was carrying his buckets, his ladders, and his boards so that he had rather a hard time moving along. He was spattered here and there with paint and calcimine, and there were bits of wallpaper clinging to his hair and whiskers, for he was rather an untidy man. Making a text-to-self connection here. Just yesterday we were working out in the yard and mixing some cement to fix part of our stone wall by some of our landscaping, and I felt just like we had things all over us, dirt and cement and weeds, and just everything seemed to be sticking to us, so I can really relate to what was happening here with Mr. Popper. The children looked up from their play to smile at him as he passed, and the housewife, seeing him, said, "Oh, dear, there goes Mr. Popper. I must remember to ask John to have the house painted over the spring." Are you guys doing some house jobs and house projects now, as you have some time maybe? No one knew what went on inside of Mr. Popper's head. Sorry. Did you click the right arrow to turn the page? No one knew what went on inside of Mr. Popper's head, and no one guessed that he would one day be the famous person in Stillwater. He was a dreamer. Even when he was busiest smoothing down the paste on the wallpaper or painting the outside of other people's houses, he would forget what he was doing. Once he had painted 3 sides of a kitchen green and the other side yellow. The housewife, instead of being angry and making him do it over, had liked it so well that she had made him leave it that way. And all the other housewives, when they saw it, admired it too, so that pretty soon everybody in Stillwater had 2 colored kitchens. The reason Mr. Popper was so absent-minded was that he was always dreaming about faraway countries. Is anybody out there a daydreamer? He had never been out of Stillwater. Not that he was unhappy. He had a nice little house of his own, a wife whom he loved dearly, and 2 children named Janie and Bill. Still, it would have been nice, he often thought, if he could have seen something of the world before he met Mrs. Popper and settled down. He had never hunted tigers in India, or climbed the peaks of the Himalayas, or dived for pearls in the South Seas. Above all, he had never seen the poles. North and south. That was what he regretted most of all. He had never seen those great shining white expanses of ice and snow. Get ready to turn your page. Click on your right arrow. How he wished that he had been a scientist.
Not.
Okay, 1 second. Instead of a house painter in Stillwater, so that he might have joined some of the great polar expeditions. Since he could not go, he was always thinking about them, and whenever he heard that a polar movie was in town, he was the first person at the ticket window, and often he thought about 3 shows. Whatever the town library had a new book about the Arctic or the Antarctic, the North Pole or the South Pole, Mr. Popper was the first to borrow it. Indeed, he had read so much about polar explorers that he could name all of them and tell you what each had done. He was quite an authority on the subject. His evenings were the best time of all. Then he could sit down in his little house and read about those cold regions at the top and bottom of the earth. As he read, he could take the little globe that Janie and Bill had given him the Christmas before and search out the exact spot he was reading about. Remember, this was before the internet when you could just go out searching. A lot more imagination involved. So now he made his way through the streets. He was happy because the day was over and because it was the end of September. When he came to the gate of the neat little bungalow at 432 Proudfoot Avenue, he turned in. "Well, my love," he said, setting down his buckets and ladders and boards and kissing Mrs. Popper. "The decorating season is over. I have painted all the kitchens in Stillwater. I have papered all the rooms in the new apartment building on Elm Street. There is no more work until spring, when people will want their houses painted." Mrs. Popper sighed. "I sometimes wish you had the kind of work that lasted all year, instead of just from spring until fall," she said. "It will be very nice to have you at home for a vacation, of course, but it is a little hard to sweep with a man sitting around reading all day." "I could decorate the house for you." "No, indeed," said Mrs. Popper firmly. "Last year you painted the bathroom 4 different times because you had nothing else to do. And I think that is enough of that. But what worries me is the money. I have saved a little, and I dare say we can get along as we have other winters. No more roast beef, no more ice cream, not even on Sundays." "Shall we have beans every day?" asked Janie and Bill, coming in from play. "I'm afraid so," said Mrs. Popper. "Anyway, go wash your hands for supper. And Papa, put away this litter of paints, because you won't be needing them for quite a while." "Well, I don't know about you, but this sounds pretty similar to life right now, right? Mr. Popper's at home, Mrs. Popper's at home. Looks like the kids are going to be home with them, at least for some of the time. So we'll see what happens in chapter 2 and in the rest of the chapters when they're all home together. So go ahead and read chapter 2 on your own. It's called The Voice in the Air. Again, toggle to the right till the arrow pops up, give it a click, and you should be able to turn your pages pretty easily. You have about 3 or 4 pages to read for chapter 2. So I hope you enjoy that chapter, and then I'm going to be sending you some questions to answer about that tomorrow, okay? Lastly, we're going to be diving into our astronomy unit, and today I've left you a link about the planet Pluto. I know when I was young and even in high school, we always learned that Pluto was a planet. But as scientific discoveries and new technologies have developed, they've been able to take a much closer look at that planet. And now Pluto is no longer considered one of the 9 planets, but instead a dwarf planet. So the article that I sent you is for kids, and I'd like for you to just read through the article that talks about all of the different reasons why scientists and astronomers made the decision together to take Pluto, which we had once learned as one of our 9 planets, and move it into a different category called a dwarf planet. So hopefully that will give you a little bit more information. And the reason why I send that, and I explain in the email, is because our textbook was written before all of this conversation started to happen about Pluto. So our textbook actually lists Pluto as a planet, but as I'm teaching you, I won't be teaching you it that way because that's not what it's called anymore. So I just wanted to clear that up with you, and we'll just read that article today, and then we'll start in our chapters tomorrow. All right? Okay, 4th grade, well, I hope you have a great Monday, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Also, I've included the link for the ice cream that Liam and his grandmother mentioned in our Fun Friday. So maybe if you have all the ingredients, or the next time you go to pick some things up from the store, you could grab them and you could make some ice cream in a bag this week too. That would be maybe a fun project to do as a family. Okay? All right, well, I'm praying for you, and I hope that you have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.